Isabella Lynn had always treated me like I was her sugar daddy, even though I never spent a penny of her money. After her first love came back, she pushed me into another woman's room, telling me to help my sister close the deal, and promised that I'd be rewarded. But when I started genuinely spending time with that woman, Isabella completely fell apart. I didn't say a word. "Who gave you permission to change your heart?" she asked. I accompanied Isabella to KTV, staying late into the night. She grabbed my chin, and I instinctively pulled away, uncomfortable. For some reason, she always liked to hook her fingers under my chin, almost like she was teasing a puppy or a kitten, despite the fact that I was much taller than her small frame. But she never did this to Carlos. She blushed just from touching his hand, even though he always acted indifferent toward her. Even though I was her boyfriend, she never did the same with me. "Isabella," she teased, "how many years have you been with me?" She hooked my chin again, and I pulled her hand away. 3 years, I muttered, Isabella's best friend, overhearing us, smirked. "Oh, look, the little puppy's angry," she teased. "Isabella, you should buy him something nice to cheer him up." Isabella laughed along. "What do you want?" she asked. I shook my head and mumbled, "Nothing." I was tired of explaining. Even though we'd been together for 3 years, I never accepted a single cent from her. Her card was neatly placed in the drawer, untouched. Everything she bought for me stayed exactly where she left it. There was only one exception, an album filled with her childhood drawings. That album I kept. On nights when I had nothing to do, I'd lay in bed and flip through it, but Isabella still saw me as her little pet, not her boyfriend. She snuggled into my arms like a kitten, finding the perfect spot, and traced small circles on my chest with her fingers. "Did you know Carlos is back?" she asked. I froze for a moment. Carlos, her first love. She had even called out his name when we were together, and that's when I knew it wasn't right for me to stay at her place anymore. This was the first time I'd seen her in over 2 weeks. She rubbed her face against me, like a kitten seeking attention. "Matthew," she said, "this time Carlos and I are going to have a definite outcome." My hand stiffened as I held her, my throat dry, stomach churning with a wave of nausea. The acid burned in my chest, and it took a while for me to regain my composure. Then I cleared my throat. "So, what do you mean?" I asked. Isabella handed me a card and rubbed against me again. "Matthew, we might be reaching the end," she said softly. I glanced at the card but didn't respond. I had given everything to Isabella for the past 3 years. Even though everyone assumed I was after her money, I never bothered to explain I'd run out in the rain to comfort her when she was afraid of thunder. I'd flown across the country just to bring her a handful of snow because she said she wanted to see it. But I later found out it was snowing heavily in Carlos's city on the same day she didn't care about the snow I brought. What she really wanted was the snow from where he was. I'd worried about her stomach problems, her drinking habits, and her work stress. I took care of her, wore myself out, even upset my father who thought I was too caught up in romance. But despite everything I did, I could never compare to Carlos. Just hearing her say his name made my stomach tighten. I swallowed and then, unable to fight the pain, I grabbed the whiskey and took a long drink. The burn helped a little, but the pain in my stomach only intensified. I raised my hand and pushed Isabella away. "All right," I said with a forced smile. "As you wish." Isabella blinked, clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. "Matthew, I'll help you find a job," she said, but I shook my head, declining. Confused, I stood up and patted my clothes down. "No need, Isabella. Everything you've given me over the past 3 years, the card, the watch, the limited edition sneakers, they're all in the safe. The password is your birthday." I turned to leave, but before I could step out, she grabbed the corner of my shirt. "Matthew, wait," she said, looking up at me with a delicate expression. "You don't seem upset about the breakup." I didn't respond. I turned to leave, but as I reached the door, Isabella caught up to me again. She was holding her phone, and the room was silent now. No one was singing anymore. I could even hear Carlos's voice on the other end of the line. "Make him go to the room, and then I'll believe you two have no lingering feelings," Carlos's voice echoed. Isabella hung up the phone, her expression unreadable. Her beautiful fox-like eyes narrowed, a clear sign of her anger. She pointed at my chest. Matthew, I'll ask you one more time. Why did you agree to the breakup so quietly? Aren't you upset? I lowered my head and laughed. Isn't it you who wanted to break up? I'm just following your wish. Why is it suddenly wrong? Isabella narrowed her eyes again, a moment of silence passing before she smiled. Fine, very fine. She pulled out a card and tossed it at me. This is the key card to a room upstairs. There's a woman inside. I need you to make her happy so my negotiation goes smoothly tomorrow. Do well, and I'll give you a substantial breakup fee. Otherwise, you get nothing. Her fingers grazed my face and her lips curled into a smile, but her eyes remained cold. My stomach churned again and my heart ached. I grabbed her wrist. Isabella, what do you take me for? Isabella just smiled at me, like I was nothing more than a big toy. If it feels good, why not let my friends enjoy it too? I stared at Isabella for a long time. This was the woman I had loved for so long, yet even her best friend felt it was wrong and stepped in to stop her. Enough, if you're breaking up, do it properly. But Isabella, stubborn as ever, handed me the key card. Are you going or not? She asked. I took a deep breath, feeling empty inside, and looked down at the card for a while before smiling and deciding to go. I grabbed the card and turned to leave, but Isabella called after me, Matthew! I stopped, waiting for her to say something, but in the end, she remained silent, not uttering a word. A bitter sigh escaped my lips. This was the last time, just as she wished. Then, I'd cut all ties and never look back. I took the elevator upstairs and ran into the hotel manager. When he saw me, he quickly stepped aside. Gab, is there something Chairman Martinez wants to convey? He asked. I shook my head. Personal matter, I replied. The card Isabella gave me was for our family's hotel. Everyone in our family group, including Isabella, was an executive, though I hadn't joined yet, so most people didn't know me. I hadn't told Isabella about it, fearing that the difference in status would taint our relationship. I even knew the room was occupied by one of our group's major clients, since Isabella's negotiation rights were secured through my father and me. I inhaled deeply and opened the door. The room was dimly lit, with just a floor lamp glowing faintly beside the sofa. A slender figure rested on the sofa, her naturally curly hair cascading over her chest. She wore a beige cashmere dress that looked both comfortable and fitting. This must be the major client, Natalie. When she heard the door open, she slowly opened her eyes. Her long, upturned eyelids met mine, unblinking. After a long pause, she smiled. So, Isabella is really willing to go all out, she said, standing up and stretching. I just casually mentioned having a little boy toy and she took it seriously. I lowered my gaze. I'm just looking around. If it was just a casual mention, I'll leave. I was angry, but I didn't want to degrade myself. Natalie raised an eyebrow. She didn't force you, did she? She asked. Then I can't let you in. I didn't answer. Natalie's expression shifted to a frown. She did, didn't she? That's not acceptable. I don't do things like that. You should go back. I nodded and turned to leave. At home, I locked myself in for 3 days. 3 days later, my father dragged me out, saying he wanted to take me to dinner to build connections for my future business endeavors. When we entered the private room, I immediately spotted a familiar face at the table. Natalie. She looked at me, raising an eyebrow. Her cherry lips moved, but no words came out. She just smiled knowingly. I could tell she was mocking me, but I had to pretend not to notice. I greeted her warmly, no matter how upset I was. I still had to manage the business side of things. Natalie raised her glass. Mr. Martinez, to you. There aren't many pure-hearted young men like you these days, she said, her eyes narrowing with a mocking smile. I knew well that in our circle, men often dated models or socialites, and they were always the ones to break up with their partners, never the other way around. I was the exception, trying to be someone's boy toy and failing. I smiled bitterly, raised my glass, and drank it all. Chairman Chen is always right, I said. I refilled my glass and toasted Natalie. Sorry for embarrassing myself. The alcohol burned, making my eyes water. My father, who always spoiled me, quickly patted my back. Look at you. Drink slowly. Don't let Chairman Chen laugh at you. I coughed, wiping my eyes. Yeah, I guess I'm quite the joke, I replied. I nodded to Natalie. Sorry for the laugh. Natalie stared at my red eyes for a moment, then nodded in acknowledgement. She didn't toast me again for the rest of the night, but her gaze softened. After dinner, my father asked me to take Natalie back to the hotel. We sat in silence in the car, Natalie staring out the window the entire time. As we neared the hotel, she turned to look at me. I'm sorry, she said. I was puzzled. Sorry for what? You didn't do anything. Natalie shook her head. I was mocking you in my mind, but then I realized I was mocking your pain. I shouldn't make fun of someone who's suffering. I'm sorry. I lowered my gaze, shaking my head. No need to apologize. I deserve it. As the car pulled up to the hotel entrance, I got out and opened the door for Natalie. I won't accompany you upstairs, I said. But Natalie looked at me with a playful glint in her eyes. Don't you want to have another drink? She asked, her almond-shaped eyes narrowing in a smile. I brought whiskey. I hesitated. It's quite late now, I said. She was a major client and I didn't want to refuse outright. Besides, she was the one in danger inviting me upstairs. Natalie laughed again. I'm not afraid of you, so why are you afraid of me? Though her words were light, there was a serious look in her eyes. I've been hurt too. We're just two wounded souls. I was touched by the flash of pain in her eyes. If there were a mirror here now, my own eyes would probably reflect the same sorrow. I closed the car door. Then I'd be honored. Over the past few days, every time I closed my eyes, I saw Isabella's cold eyes, the room card she threw at me, and her with Carlos. I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. I really needed a drink to help me forget, to forget the outcome of my 3 years of sincere love. I walked into the hotel lobby with Natalie. The lobby manager stepped forward, about to speak, but a shocked voice interrupted him. Matthew? My body tensed. It was Isabella's voice. She sounded surprised, but more than that, angry. What are you doing here? I turned and saw Isabella coming out of the hotel restaurant with a few clients. She narrowed her eyes at me, looking from me to Natalie, who was standing beside me. With a forced smile, she said, Chairman Chen, it seems my recommendation suits your taste. Natalie, smiling, linked her arm through mine and nodded at Isabella. I quite like him. I was stunned by Natalie's actions, and so was Isabella. Her face turned pale, and her voice wavered as she said, Chairman Chen, could I speak with Matthew for a minute? Suddenly, I remembered something and realized I needed to ask him about it. Natalie glanced at me, seeing I didn't refuse, shrugged and said, Just 2 minutes. We're in a hurry to go upstairs. Isabella bit her lip, then motioned for me to come closer. I didn't move, and Isabella's anger intensified. Matthew, could you come here? Her voice was filled with fury. Her delicate face was full of rage, her eyes growing colder with every second. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, not knowing what she wanted to say. At this point, it couldn't be an apology. Isabella pulled me a few steps away, her fingers icy against my skin. Her face was dark, and her teeth were clenched. Matthew, don't you feel dirty? I was stunned. I could accept almost anything she said, but calling me dirty was something I couldn't take. How am I dirty? I asked, my voice tight. Isabella's eyes burned with cold fury. I thought you wouldn't really go upstairs. Did you really go? What did you do, huh? She scrutinized my face and neck, as if trying to examine my entire body. I looked at her angry expression, feeling a mix of surprise and amusement. I glanced down at her trembling hands and asked, Didn't you tell me to go, Isabella? I was just following your orders. I was angry at you. I was just angry. The fire in her eyes grew brighter, and she snapped, How was I supposed to know you'd really go and sleep with someone else? Matthew, don't you have any shame? Isabella, usually so composed and indifferent, had always teased me more than anything else, but in this moment, her eyes were red, and her lips trembled with anger. She looked like a child whose favorite toy had been taken away, and I could see a glimpse of the genuine Isabella from her childhood, vulnerable and real. I closed my eyes and sighed. Isabella, I have to go. We're done. I turned and walked back to Natalie, allowing her to take my arm as we entered the elevator. Behind me, Isabella's low, furious voice called out, Matthew! I paused for a brief moment but then kept walking, not looking back. Natalie and I drank heavily. Neither of us spoke. We silently poured drinks, silently toasted, and silently drank. I looked out the window, lost in thoughts of the past 3 years. Natalie did the same, her eyes distant as she stared at the city lights. After a long silence, a tear formed in her eye and rolled down her face. She smiled bitterly. "Why are there so many people who don't know how to cherish what they have?" she asked softly. "They trample on others' genuine feelings, and yet they don't feel any sadness about it." I shook my head and drank another glass. Natalie turned her head, watching the city lights. The tear in her eye fell, but she didn't speak. We drank for 5 hours from evening until the early morning. Drunk, I carried the sleeping Natalie to bed, covered her with a blanket, and staggered downstairs. As I reached the lobby, I heard a voice calling my name. "Matthew!" I turned to see Isabella curled up on the sofa in the lobby, wrapped in a shawl. Her hair was messy, and her makeup was smudged. She looked at me with red eyes. "Matthew, I've been waiting for you all night. Why did you just come down now?" She walked toward me, her steps slow, and continued. "I've thought about it carefully. You're not that kind of person. Nothing happened between you and her, right?" I rubbed my temples, unable to speak. The headache from the alcohol was splitting my head, and it hurt even more because of the pain in my heart. Isabella stared at me, clearly unwilling to give up without an answer. I suddenly felt a wave of laughter rise within me. In the past, I was the one waiting for her, spending sleepless nights, waiting for her to say she was working overtime, only for the office building to be dark, and on her best friend's social media, I would see Carlos toasting with her. It happened again and again until I lost hope, and now she was waiting all night for me. "Why not earlier?" I laughed. "Isabella, does this still concern you? Is there really a need for explanations between us?" Isabella hesitated, seemingly searching for an excuse. After a long moment, she finally spoke. "You owe me money, so why can't I ask?" I pressed my temples in disappointment. It was an old feeling, disappointment, but it had become overwhelming. It piled up until it turned into despair. I had despaired of Isabella. I held my forehead, trying to suppress the headache. "Isabella, if you cared about me at all, you would have realized that in these 3 years, I haven't spent a single penny of your money. I haven't even touched your card." Isabella didn't believe me. "Then what about your clothes, your watch, your bag?" she asked. "Those are my own money," I interrupted, losing all patience. "Isabella, everyone around you flatters you for money. So you think everyone's like that. But I'm not. I'm different from them." Isabella bit her lip. "Matthew, how about we talk again?" I shook my head. "Talk about what, Isabella?" I decided to rip open the old wound and lay everything bare. "Shall we talk about how every time Carlos calls, you push me away to find him? Or how every time Carlos returns, you work overtime endlessly, even though the office is empty and the security's asleep? Or how, at Carlos's word, you wouldn't even give me the courtesy of a proper breakup, shoving me into another woman's room like I'm some toy? Even if it was in the past, even if I had let go, I still trembled at the memories. Those memories turned into steel needles piercing my heart, making it hard to breathe. I took a deep breath. "So what do you want to talk about?" I asked, offering a mocking smile. "Or have you decided to leave Carlos and want me back?" Isabella fell silent, her eyes welling up. She suddenly began crying, her hands covering her face. "Matthew," she sobbed, "I can't do it. I've waited for him too long." I closed my eyes, the pain in my chest twisting like a knife. My voice came out cold, distant. "Fine, then just leave me alone. From now on, don't care who I drink with, whose room I enter, or whose bed I sleep in. It's got nothing to do with you anymore." Isabella's sobs grew quieter as I turned and walked toward the door. The cold, early morning wind cut through me, blowing away the last remnants of reluctance. When I got home, I drunkenly searched through my bedroom. After a long search, I found an album. It was the only thing of Isabella's I had kept. Isabella had been an amazing artist as a child, and this album was filled with vivid drawings of 2 children, a lively, pretty little girl and a silent little boy. The girl held the boy's hand wherever they went, never letting go. Even when older kids bullied them, they stood firm, holding hands and refusing to separate. The pages had turned yellow, and many of the pencil lines were blurred, but I treasured it. I had rescued it from the trash when Isabella was about to throw it away. I used to look through it often. Only when I looked at the album did I feel like Isabella had once given me warmth, that she had held my hand firmly and never wanted to let go. I closed the album and fell asleep in my clothes. In my dreams, Isabella as a child held my hand as we ran away, and then, in the present, Isabella looked at me coldly and said, "I'm tired of you. Let's break up." I woke up at 10 a.m. to several missed calls from my dad. Come to the company at noon and take Natalie out for a walk, visit some scenic spots. I realized my dad was trying to set up something with Natalie. In families like ours, marriages were usually arranged, and everyone accepted it, except for me. I thought I could make it work with Isabella, but I always went against my dad's wishes, refusing arranged dates. That's why I hadn't been called to work in the company yet. Even now, I didn't want to marry someone I didn't love, nor did I want to have a child just for the sake of it, only to live separate lives afterward. I wanted to refuse, but the memory of Natalie's tear falling last night as she stared out the window stayed with me. The tear had silently fallen onto the carpet, her face expressionless. But as the night passed over her almond-shaped eyes, I saw a hint of sorrow. That glimpse of sadness made it impossible for me to say no. So at noon, I drove to the company, waiting in the lobby, scrolling through my phone for Natalie to come down. As I scrolled, a pair of beige high heels appeared in my line of sight. Thinking it was Natalie, I smiled and looked up. "I've been waiting for you," I said. But when I looked up, it was Isabella. She was dressed in a professional suit with light makeup, but the dark circles under her eyes couldn't be hidden, making her beautiful face look exhausted. She quietly looked at me. "Matthew, you came to find me, right? But what's the point now?" "That day I called you, and you didn't even turn back." I was stunned. "I didn't come to find you," I replied, but Isabella frowned. "What else could you be here for if not to find me?" "I'm waiting for someone," I said. Just as I said it, someone tugged at my sleeve. Then the person linked their arm through mine and smiled. "Shall we go?" I turned and saw Natalie. Today she was dressed in denim, her hair in 2 braids, looking much more lively than the last 2 times I had seen her. She tilted her head and smiled at me. "Aren't you here to take me out?" Looking at her smooth forehead and her dimples, I suddenly felt the warmth of the sun on my back. I nodded. "Let's go. I'll take you to the wetland park first, and then we can go hiking." As Natalie and I walked out together, I didn't even notice her holding my arm. Behind us, Isabella shouted, "Matthew, come back!" I didn't stop. Isabella's voice was tearful. "Come back, look at me!" I waved my hand back at her, then got in my sports car and drove off with Natalie. Many people in the company watched us leave, but Isabella was the most shocked of all. Isabella sent me a WeChat message. "Where did you get the sports car? Did Natalie give it to you? Matthew, are you with her for money?" After a while, she sent another message. "Matthew, you're not that kind of person, right? Natalie's circle is different from ours. She's just playing with you." I replied, "Weren't you just playing too?" Isabella didn't respond. Natalie took my phone from me. "We're out to have fun, so let's really enjoy it. Why the long face?" She looked out the window. "There's no sadness that alcohol can't solve. If one drink doesn't work, have 2. I remembered Natalie's tear and couldn't help but feel curious. "Chairman Martinez, Jr., sounds like you have some unresolved history as well," she said, turning her gaze back to me and offering a small smile. She looked out at the view of the wetland park, then spoke calmly. "My ex-boyfriend didn't know about my family background at first. He claimed he loved me deeply, but when I took over the family business and refused his unreasonable demands, he hired people to kidnap me, hoping to make a profit. Then he planned to kill me." I was stunned. After a pause, I apologized. "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked." Natalie shook her head. "It's okay. It's all in the past." She tucked a strand of loose hair behind her ear and continued. "During that time, I relied on alcohol to get through. That's why I suggested you drink. I know how painful it is to have your sincere feelings betrayed." She spoke with such lightness, But I suddenly remembered that Natalie was only 26, forced to take on such a huge responsibility after her father had a stroke, to be kidnapped by someone she loved. It must have been devastating. I hesitated, then gently patted her shoulder. It's all in the past. I took Natalie around to various places, and during a break I checked my phone. I saw a post from Isabella's best friend on social media. Isabella is engaged to her love, the post read. The picture showed Isabella in the company lobby, accepting a bouquet of roses from Carlos, a ring sparkling on her finger. Isabella's best friend added a comment. Some people have successfully missed their last chance to make amends. I looked at the picture of Isabella and Carlos embracing, feeling nothing in particular. It felt like the sharp blade that had been suspended above my head for so long had finally fallen. In truth, I felt relieved. I put down my phone and continued the day with Natalie, hiking, eating, and watching a movie. When I dropped her off, it was already 10 p.m. On my way home, I received a call from Isabella. She sounded clearly drunk. "Matthew, didn't you see the post? Why didn't you react? Why didn't you act?" I laughed. "What kind of reaction do you want? Do you want me to congratulate you and send a gift?" Isabella paused. Her voice sounded hoarse. "Matthew, you're not happy, are you?" She continued. "If you're unhappy, just say the word and I will—" But she didn't finish the sentence. I lowered my eyes, mocking her. "And what? It's not like you're going to refuse Carlos, right?" Isabella hesitated, then hesitated again. I laughed out loud. "Isabella, if you want my blessing, then here it is. I wish you and Carlos a lifetime of happiness. Don't be conflicted anymore. You can't let him go." Isabella remained silent. Just as I was about to hang up, she spoke softly. "I thought I couldn't let go, but now I'm not sure. Matthew, I don't know how to choose. When I see you with Natalie, it's like there's a fire burning in my heart." I hung up the phone without another word. Disappointment could be recovered from, but despair could not. My dad was pleased to see I was no longer moving out or lowering myself for some inexplicable female employee. He encouraged me to start working at the company soon and suggested I collaborate with Natalie. Meanwhile, Isabella sent me a message. "Matthew, I regret it." I ignored her and blocked her on every platform: phone, WeChat, Weibo, QQ, Douyin, and Zhihu. I wanted her completely out of my life. Isabella's best friend cursed me on social media, blaming me for driving Isabella crazy. Later, even Carlos called me. "Matthew, you play hard to get very well, but you're just a toy. Isabella will never care about you." After hanging up, I looked at the custom suit my dad had made for me and fell into deep thought. I wondered if Carlos knew that his new boss arriving tomorrow was named Matthew. The next day, during the department meeting, the cooperation department awaited the entrance of the chairman's son. Both Carlos and Isabella were sitting in the conference room, eager and all smiles, waiting for the door to open. Then I walked in. Isabella stood up first. "Matthew, why are you here?" Before she could finish, the assistant respectfully introduced me. "This is the son of Chairman Martinez. You can just call him Gab from now on. Work well with him and perform excellently." Isabella froze. I watched as her face turned pale. "Matthew, you—" She didn't know. I had never come to the company or mentioned my background. I had always been so obedient and easy to please that no one had ever thought I was my dad's only son. I sat down and motioned for her to sit as well. "Manager Lin, don't be so formal. Sit down and speak." Isabella remained stiff, unable to move. Carlos had to pull her down into her seat, his face darkening, almost turning an unhealthy shade of purple. I lowered my head and began looking at the documents. "Report one by one," I instructed. When it came to Isabella's turn, she stammered. I interrupted. "If Manager Lin can't explain it clearly, find someone who can. We're dealing with the empire my father built with great effort, not a place for personal feelings." Carlos did relatively well, except for his trembling hands as he opened the documents. Everything else was acceptable. The meeting lasted for an hour. After it ended, as I stepped out of the conference room, Isabella seemed to snap out of her shock and chased after me. "Matthew, you—" She couldn't finish her sentence this time either, because Natalie was waiting outside my office, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. She smiled, and the sunlight streaming in from the window illuminated her and the flowers, creating a warm glow. I smiled and accepted the flowers. "Thank you. Come in and sit." Isabella tried to follow us in, but the door was blocked. Natalie sat across from me, arranging the sunflowers. "Gab," she smiled, "our collaboration will end next month." I suddenly felt a wave of uncertainty, not knowing exactly why. But after reflecting for a moment, I realized it was because I had relied so much on her company during the hardest times of my life. I watched her carefully arranging the flowers, and in a burst of impulse, I asked, "Can I still visit you in your city?" Natalie lifted her gaze to meet mine, her eyes sparkling. After a pause, she smiled softly and lowered her gaze again. "You're always welcome," she said. I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling nervous. It was as though there was so much more I wanted to say, but the words just wouldn't come out. Before I could speak, the office door suddenly swung open, and I glanced over, annoyed, only to see Isabella storming in. Her eyes were red, no longer calm and collected. "Are you really Chairman Martinez's only son?" she demanded. I nodded, and Natalie smiled lightly. "Yes, Manager Lin. You've kept Chairman Martinez's son as your pet for 3 years." Isabella's face paled even further. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at her perfectly made-up face, realizing that I could no longer see the little girl I once knew. The person standing before me now was someone else entirely. I closed my eyes in deep disappointment and decided I couldn't hide anymore. "Isabella, I'm not just Chairman Martinez's son. I had another name when I was young. Gab Mo." Thud. Isabella collapsed onto the floor, knocking over a teacup. Her hand was bleeding, but she didn't seem to notice. Her eyes locked on me as if she didn't recognize me. After a moment, she seemed to recall something, and the realization hit her hard. "What have I done?" she whispered, almost to herself, as if she were questioning both me and herself. As a child, my dad was part of a wealthy family. He carried my grandfather's surname Mo, but my grandfather's addiction to gambling ruined everything. He squandered the family fortune, abandoned my grandmother, and disappeared without a trace. We fell into poverty, living in the slums and struggling to pay off debts. I went from being the richest kid at school to the most pitiful, and naturally, I became a target for bullying. At that time, there was a girl named Isabella in my school. Her father was disabled, and her mother had mental health issues. She, too, was bullied. The first time I was picked on, Isabella appeared out of nowhere, grabbed my hand, and we ran for our lives. She knew the area well and used clever tricks to make it impossible for the others to catch us. That was how I met her. Over the next few days, Isabella and I stuck together for warmth. We endured beatings together, fought back together, had our lunches stolen, went hungry, and begged for food from small shops. Later, my family moved to another city to start fresh, and I was transferred to a new school. Isabella and I didn't want to be separated, so we ran away. My father had to call the police to find us. When we finally parted ways, I promised Isabella that I would come back for her. Years passed, and not a single day went by that I didn't think about the girl who shared my struggles. Luckily, my family eventually made money, and we returned to our hometown. But tragically, my grandmother passed away from overwork. My father said that since my grandfather abandoned us, and my grandmother had devoted her life to us, we should take her surname. So I changed from Gab to Matthew Martinez. When we returned, Isabella had just joined my company. She was capable and hardworking, but she didn't recognize me. As I got closer to her, I noticed she avoided talking about her past and had severed ties with everyone from her childhood. I kept my past hidden, pursued her relentlessly, and eventually stood by her side. I thought I was fulfilling the promise I made to her, but I never imagined that I was nothing more than a temporary companion to her. Now, looking at Isabella sitting on the floor, my heart, which once loved her, didn't stir at all. But the younger version of me was crying out in anguish. We had promised to be together when we grew up. Back then, holding hands, we were closer than anyone else. But in the end, this is how it turned out. I called for iodine and bandages and crouched down to tend to Isabella's wound. I applied the iodine and then the bandage, offering her a weak smile. I once thought we would truly fulfill our promise and be together. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes, her lips trembling. She couldn't speak, only whimpering softly in pain. Somehow, we had reached this point. I helped her up and said softly, "Isabella, we can't go any further. This is the end." Tears streamed down her face as her beautiful eyes filled with pain and pleading. After a long silence, she finally managed to speak, trembling. "If I had known it was you, I would never have treated you this way." I sighed, my voice heavy with finality. "It's too late." I opened the office door. "Isabella, the best time is past. Now we've reached a dead end." Isabella stood in the doorway for what felt like an eternity, crying until she broke down completely. Eventually, her cries drew my father's attention. When he came downstairs, I was holding Isabella's album in my hands. "This is the only thing I kept from everything you gave me," I said softly. But now, looking at it, I realize there's no need to keep it anymore. We both need to move on. Isabella's trembling hands opened the album, revealing the childish drawings of two kids, one being beaten, the other crying in pain. One was running away while the other distracted the pursuers. One held the other's hand, looking at the sky in silence. On the last day before we parted, the two had made a promise to be together. In the future, every stroke of the pen would be sincere, yet those days now felt like a cruel joke. Isabella flipped to the last page of the album, and tears fell onto the pages. She closed it quickly and turned, running away with a cry. Her staggering figure, shoulders trembling, overlapped with the little girl who had once been chased and beaten. My dad stood beside me, watching, and asked, "Will you keep her on?" I hesitated for a moment. If her performance is good, keep her. If not, let her go. In my heart, I believed in Isabella, the girl who fought her way out of the slums, who changed so drastically and severed ties with her past. She deserved her position. She just didn't keep our childhood promise, but I told myself it was okay. It was all in the past now. I turned to Natalie. "I'll be going to your city for a business trip this month. Will you welcome me?" Natalie looked at me quietly, and after a pause, she handed me a sunflower. "Welcome." Carlos had resigned. Even if he hadn't, he couldn't face me day after day, taking my orders. Isabella had helped him a lot in his career, but after resigning, he struggled to find a suitable job. He felt frustrated and wanted to return, but I couldn't go back to the past, nor would I let anyone treat me as a fallback. Career and love were both the same to me. After that day, Isabella took a leave of absence. She hadn't taken time off in years, but now, she took a full month. A month later, she was waiting for me downstairs at the company. She had lost a lot of weight. Her hair had grown out and remained unkempt, and her professional attire had been replaced by casual clothes, still the matching couple style I had bought her. When she saw me, she burst into tears without saying a word. "Matthew," she said between sobs, "this past month I visited every temple I could, praying for time to reverse." She smiled bitterly. "I know it's nonsense, but I couldn't help it. What if there's really a God who hears me? If time could reverse, I'd never treat you this way." I looked at my watch. "Isabella, I have to pick someone up for dinner, so let's keep this brief. We've been busy at work lately, and I suggest not taking leave unless it's for health or family reasons." Isabella froze. After a long silence, she smiled bitterly. "So I have no chance, right?" I didn't respond because I saw Natalie walking over with a smile. "I came early to avoid traffic," she said, holding out her hand to me. "Let's go. We'll have dinner early and catch a movie." We walked hand in hand, forgetting that Isabella was still standing there. From behind, we heard the soft sound of crying. "Matthew, I'm here to resign. I can't face you anymore." Natalie stopped and looked at me. "Should you talk to her?" she asked. I shook my head. "No need." I turned back to Isabella, smiling sincerely, just like we did when we were kids. "Isabella, I agree. I wish you all the best." Turning away, I walked off with Natalie. The crying behind us grew louder, eventually turning into wails of regret. But I couldn't look back. There was still a long road ahead for Natalie and me to walk together. I held Natalie's hand tightly, and she gently squeezed mine in return. This time, Neither of us would let go. Isabella's story. I don't like it when people bring up my childhood. It was the most shameful and unbearable time of my life. I later worked tirelessly, studied relentlessly, anything to escape the shadow of that past, that shadow of being laughed at and bullied. But there was one thing I could never shake off: the smile of a boy. His smile was so sincere. Gab and I became inseparable, going everywhere together. His childish voice solemnly promised me, "When I grow up, I'll work hard to make money and marry you." Back then, we believed that marriage was the ultimate guarantee of never being apart. But I matured faster than he did. I knew it wasn't realistic. Kids like us couldn't afford to love each other, or else we'd drag each other down. But somehow, I still nodded. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Even now, when I look back, I don't know why I nodded. Later, Gab had to transfer to another city. He hugged me and cried. I usually avoided trouble, but that day something clouded my judgment. "Why don't we run away?" I suggested. "We can survive by picking up trash." Gab nodded, and we ran to the outskirts, holding hands. We were so naive, thinking our efforts alone could sustain us. But less than a day later, Gab was found by the police. No one came for me. My parents hadn't even reported me missing. When the police brought us back, we had to part. Gab cried his heart out, hugging me tightly. "Isabella, wait for me. I'll come back for you." By then, I knew that adults often don't keep their promises, let alone children. But when Gab said that, for some reason I believed him. I didn't cry, but I nodded very seriously. "I'll wait for you." 10 years passed. My father, now disabled and a compulsive gambler, would sell off family belongings when he lost. Finally, he pinned his hopes on me. "If you sleep with the dealer for one night, our lives will turn around." He even brought the dealer home to inspect me. But that day, my mother had an episode, wielding a kitchen knife. When she was lucid, she hugged me and said, "Go, never come back." I took my documents and fled. My mother said our dilapidated home would burn down. From then on, I had no home. I worked desperately hard and got a job at Martinez Corporation. Everyone at work knew not to mess with me. I became ruthless with anyone who stood in my way. It wasn't a choice, it was instinct, shaped by my childhood. When former classmates heard about my success, they tried to cozy up to me, but they had no idea how deeply I rejected my past. Anyone who even mentioned knowing the old me was immediately cut off, without hesitation. That version of me, my shame, my pain, the festering wound, was something no one could touch. The sweet, innocent Isabella of the past was long gone. In her place stood the new Isabella, one who had shed her morals and lived only for herself. I drank heavily, partied recklessly, and lived as though there was no purpose. I chased after Carlos, someone from an intellectual family with a prestigious education, as if I were reaching for a dream that was always out of reach. Back in my childhood, I had dreamed of being a university professor. Even though I knew Carlos was playing me, I was like a donkey chasing a carrot, exhausted, but unwilling to give up. Others pursued me too, wealthy individuals among them, but I couldn't stand them. Every detail of their excessive lifestyles pricked at the remnants of my childhood self-esteem, which had been shattered long ago. They didn't know what it meant to live without money, and I didn't even fully understand what money was. The inferiority complex buried deep within me couldn't be erased, so I let myself be strung along by Carlos, wasting my youth, living in a twisted, aimless state of self-loathing. Then, one night, at a nightclub, a handsome young man approached me. He wasn't great at flirting, awkwardly drinking drink after drink, thinking it would impress me. I despised that naivety. I didn't care for rookies, but for some reason, I chose to keep him around. It wasn't the way he drank that moved me. It was the shadow of familiarity I saw in him, a shadow buried deep in my mind, tied to my past, a forbidden area that no one was allowed to touch. I assumed he was just a nightclub salesman. When I took him home, he overheard my drunken phone call with my best friend, cursing the wealthy second-generation kids with harsh words. I also vented about my former classmates trying to get close to me. I saw him stiffen in the passenger seat, thinking I had scared him. I laughed and patted his head. "Don't worry, I'm not like this in bed." He forced a smile, but his gaze turned introspective. He introduced himself as Matthew Martinez, saying he had no money, no job. Our boss also had the last name Martinez, so I jokingly said, "Go check the family tree, maybe your distant relatives, and I can get some help." Matthew laughed awkwardly. Matthew was handsome with a great physique, and soon I wanted to move in with him. Matthew was kind-hearted and unpretentious. I gave him cards, bought him things, showered him with luxury, but he never became materialistic. In fact, I even thought he might have the potential to be a monk, so calm and unworldly. Yet, he was so dedicated to me, and even though everyone said I was just playing with him, he stayed earnest about our relationship for 3 years. People aren't robots, they have feelings. Every night, I woke up in a cold sweat from nightmares about my past. I clung to Matthew each time I drank to the point of pain, crying for my mom. Matthew would rush to me, saying he would love me in place of her. When I was overwhelmed by jealousy of the rich, Matthew would quietly listen to my ugliest thoughts, patting my back in silence. 3 years went by. I told everyone I was just having fun, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had developed feelings for him too. I even thought about promoting him to an administrative position and marrying him. But just as I made up my mind to settle down, Carlos came back. When I welcomed Carlos back, I didn't invite Matthew, but Carlos still saw Matthew's photo through my best friend and sneered, "Quite good looking." I smiled and said nothing. Within days, Carlos requested a transfer back to headquarters and began working closely with me, asking for my help with his work. I agreed. Carlos was pleased and jokingly said, "Kick that poor boy out. It's time to settle down." I frowned at the term poor boy. I didn't like anyone describing Matthew that way, but marrying Carlos would allow me to integrate into an intellectual family, and my children could become university professors in the future. The misery and inferiority of my childhood had twisted into a beast in my heart, sharp, vicious, devouring everything I once believed in. I wanted to erase the imprint of my past and become someone new, a Isabella who could leave it all behind. In the days that followed, I couldn't bear to look at Matthew. I didn't even want to speak to him much. Matthew, thinking I was under too much pressure, tried to cheer me up. He suggested getting a cat to relieve my stress, made soup for me, and even invited me to go hiking, always cautious, always caring. I thought about it for a while and decided I had to get drunk to talk to him. I called my best friend and Matthew to join me for karaoke, drinking recklessly. Whiskey burned my nose and made me cough, my eyes watering from the sting. When I got drunk, I collapsed into Matthew's arms and laughed. "We're done. I think all my harsh self-training paid off. I've become an emotionless creature with only goals," I said. I watched his eyes go from bright to dull under the lights of the private room. I thought he would beg me to reconsider. For a brief moment, I even hoped he would. If he did, maybe I would reconsider. But instead, he quietly stood up, nodded, and turned to leave, as if the 3 years of companionship and dependence meant nothing to him. I was instantly furious. Carlos had suggested that I push Matthew onto our new major client to reassure him. We had heard that this client had recently gone through a breakup and was in a vulnerable state. The suggestion was for our benefit. Given my ruthless nature, I would have agreed without hesitation, but that day I actually hoped Matthew would beg me not to break up with him. Then, perhaps I might have reconsidered, but Matthew showed no reluctance. That stung my heart. I smiled, handed him the room card and said, "Go accompany the client, and Big Sister will give you a breakup fee." Matthew was already at the door, the hallway light casting shadows on his face. I saw a brief flash of pain in his eyes, but strangely, it made me happy. At least he was hurting for me. I thought I was mentally prepared for this, but I never expected that seeing Matthew with Natalie would hurt so much. It was like an invisible hand squeezing my heart, its nails digging deep, twisting and twisting until it was bloody and mangled. The pain exceeded everything I thought I could endure. Even though I was known for my strength and patience, this broke me. Disregarding the client's needs, I rushed to confront Matthew, even though I no longer had any right to question him. For the first time, the usually gentle Matthew looked at me with coldness in his eyes and told me, "You have no right to interfere in my life." He sneered, Or are you planning to give up on Carlos's? I thought I would shake my head without hesitation. Who wouldn't choose Carlos? But at that moment I hesitated. Reason kept telling me Carlos was the only way to completely sever my past. Yet a voice in my heart lamented, "Can you really let go of Matthew? Can you bear to?" I had grown up in the worst of environments. I was used to making rational choices. But in that moment I cried and said, "I can't let go of Carlos." The voice in my heart sighed, long and deep, as if it foresaw the future pain and loneliness I would face. After Matthew left, nightmares plagued me every night. In each one, I was relentlessly chased by a group of people. A figure was always beside me, running with me, but I couldn't see his face. Every night I woke up crying, habitually reaching out, searching for Matthew beside me. But I couldn't find him. More than once, I sat up until dawn, telling myself I would forget eventually, just like I did with my childhood. I told myself that wanting to forget would eventually lead to forgetting, but I despairingly found that this time was different. Matthew was different. I couldn't forget. When I saw Matthew coming to the company to pick up Natalie, panic, jealousy, and pain overwhelmed me. I even considered rushing over, grabbing Matthew, and begging him to reconcile in front of Natalie. But when I saw him drive away in his sports car, panic consumed me. I feared that if he was happy with Natalie, he wouldn't come back. I called Matthew, telling him that Natalie was just playing with him and not to take it seriously. But deep down, I knew my intentions weren't pure. I couldn't stand the thought of him looking at another woman with the same gaze he once had for me. Matthew replied calmly, "Weren't you just playing with me too?" I was stunned. I had no words. What right did I have to teach Matthew how to see through people? Wasn't I the one who treated him the worst? That day, Carlos proposed to me, and I dazedly agreed. I knew I had no way out. Carlos was my only option, but my heart still ached. I lamented the loss of something important, leaving a piece of my heart empty, a void that could never be filled. I imagined countless identities for Matthew: a nightclub salesman, a gigolo, a minor actor, or even a waiter. But I never ever imagined that Matthew would be the heir to Martinez Corporation. When he entered the meeting room, I was stunned. The shock hit me like a freight train because my instincts told me that my career was in jeopardy. But then, another kind of fear set in. A deep, indescribable fear. It felt like the greatest pain of my life was about to descend upon me. I was terrified. I disregarded my dignity and chased after Matthew to his office, even begging him to look at me one more time. If he looked at me again, would he remember that he once loved me? But he didn't look at me. He was looking at Natalie, with the same tenderness he once had for me. I never imagined that seeing Matthew look at another woman like that would hurt so deeply. The pain was so intense I clutched my chest, struggling to breathe. But I told myself it was fine. After climbing so high over the years, there was nothing I couldn't endure. But the next moment, Matthew told me he was Gabmo. I couldn't take it. The moment I heard that name, my mind exploded like a bomb. Gabmo. It was the name I had buried so deep, the name tied to all those painful, humiliating memories. The walls I had built around my past to keep it locked away came crashing down. Those memories rushed back in waves, and at the heart of the wreckage stood a little boy, quietly looking at me. "We promised to be together," he seemed to say, the words echoing in my mind. "Did you forget?" I fell, cutting my hand, and blood flowed freely. But I didn't care. I just stared at Matthew, finally remembering why he looked so familiar. The lament in my heart turned into a roar. "I warned you. I clearly warned you." Tears covered my face without my realizing. The pain was unbearable, too intense to withstand. My childhood support, my teenage hope, the only beautiful memory in my ugly past, was in front of me, and I had treated him like a toy. I had played with him until now. I was done, and then I threw him away. But then, I suddenly remembered something. After breaking up with Matthew, I found all the cards in the drawer, all the gifts neatly stored in the closet. But the one thing that was missing was my sketchbook. The sketchbook I had told him to throw away, the one he had picked up like a treasure and kept carefully. That sketchbook held the warm details of our childhood, and now Matthew had returned it to me, severing our last connection. I covered my face, sobbing uncontrollably. Matthew applied iodine and bandaged my wound. He sighed, and in that moment it felt like I could hear him sighing too. "Isabella, we've really reached the end." I felt the weight of his words sink deep into me. I had waited all those days. If you had turned back even once, we wouldn't be here now. Suddenly, I felt all my strength leave me. I had fought for over 10 years, never giving up easily on anything. As long as I could speak, I could defend myself. But in that moment, I had nothing left. I could fail anyone, but failing Gab Mo was the thing that broke me. It drained every last ounce of my strength. Later, I took a month off from work. I visited temples, praying for a chance to turn back time. It was the only solace I had, the only thing that kept me going. But after a month, time continued its relentless march forward. My despair grew, day by day, as did my longing for Matthew. I couldn't resist going to see him. He was impeccably dressed in a suit, smiling, looking so happy, and for the first time, I realized that this was happiness, a happiness I had never seen before, a happiness I had never given him. I knew I should let him go, that he deserved this happiness, but I couldn't accept it. I really truly missed my Mo, my Matthew, the only person in the world, apart from my mom, who had ever been good to me, and he had been good to me twice. I begged Matthew for another chance, but he interrupted me with a smile, looking straight ahead. I turned my head and saw Natalie standing there. She was wearing a beige dress, standing in the sunlight, gentle and bright. Her smile pierced through me. It was the kind of smile that someone like me, living in the shadows, could never possess. That long-lost inferiority complex surged back into me. I retreated into the corner, watching Matthew and Natalie walk away hand in hand. The excruciating pain of jealousy consumed me. In that moment, I realized I had lost all my chances. It was time for me to exit. I quit my job. I used to be someone who only wanted to climb higher, but overnight, I had lost my spirit. I broke off my engagement with Carlos. Carlos once asked me, "Is it because I can't find a job that you look down on me now?" I shook my head. "No, it's because I look down on myself." I went back to my alma mater and opened a small convenience store nearby. The store faced the playground where Matthew and I used to sit and watch the stars. Back then, little Matthew would point at the sky and say, "Sophie, my Aries is here and your Scorpio is over there." I didn't know if he was pointing correctly, but I followed along. They're not far apart, which means Aries and Scorpio are good friends and will never be separated. Matthew scratched his head and laughed. "Just like us, we'll never be apart." I watched the stars from that playground while running my small store. To this day, I still can't tell which is Aries and which is Scorpio, but it doesn't matter. As long as they're the stars that Matthew and I looked at together, as long as I still have those memories. Later, I remained alone for the rest of my life. Matthew often appeared in the news. He and Natalie got married and had a son and a daughter. His business grew bigger and bigger, and he matured, no longer the shy boy who once courted me. One year, a reporter, gossiping, asked him, "Have you only ever loved your wife?" I saw him pause for a second, then smile and nod. Yes. I covered my face and wept. That year I was 50 years old. That year I had finally learned to tell Aries from Scorpio. But it was too late. For the rest of my life, I would never see my Matthew, my boy, again.